I was a young manager just into my 30s and sitting in a conference room, and historically would have gone into the conference room, had a discussion, and assumed that folks who had a point to address would bring it up. But Ed points out that not everyone is really comfortable in expressing their opinions in that setting, right? And so he says, go around the conference room and actively solicit feedback from each individual person. The very first time that I did that, the challenge that we were discussing, the by far best result came from the person who hadn't said anything until directly addressed and solicited.
And this is Scaling Clean, the podcast for clean economy CEOs, investors, and the people who advise them. I'm your host, Melissa Baldwin. Each show, we bring you usable insights from tested leaders that you can apply to the business of running your business. Most companies in clean energy fit into a category: developer, EPC, or IPP. My next guest, Daniel Dus, has spent his career working across all of those. Daniel is the CEO of Cleantech Industry Resources and the co-founder of one of our industry's most cherished social gatherings, Solar Fight Night. CIR acts as an on-demand operating system for clean energy project delivery. They can plug into development teams whether they need diligence and siting or construction and asset management. It's a model that makes sense right now when developers are under pressure to do more with less. We talk about development challenges and why Daniel believes the future of the industry depends as much on us supporting each other and building community as it does on technology. Here's my conversation with Daniel. I hope you enjoy it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with you and with your company, Cleantech Industry Resources. What do you do?
We're sort of like a choose your own adventure story for energy project delivery. And so our customers come to us with any number of various issues, and we work to solve those issues across the entire spectrum from early stage all the way through construction management and delivery.
And it's full cycle, though. I heard you say through early stage site selection. I was looking at some of your tools earlier in the new, the project siting assistant, but you're also helping owners who are operating. Is that right?
Yeah, all the way through asset management support. So you can think of us as a turnkey developer or a turnkey construction delivery engine or a turnkey IPP. It's just that we don't do any of those things for ourselves. We only do them and provide them to the market as a service.
What's your most popular service?
Yeah, it's remarkably flexible because it depends on the client's internal bandwidth, their own capabilities, what they're best at, what they're internalizing versus what they want to outsource, and the status of their pipeline. But it can resemble, with any unique client, a sort of game of whack-a-mole where the bandwidth constraint on the client side moves around a bit. It might be engineering this week as they're rushing into construction. It might be project financing and structuring another week as they're moving into a financial closing, and so on.
So, development as a service, this is a new concept. How do you explain that simply?
It is. I think we've created this as a sort of segment, if you would. And so I think the simplest way to describe it is we are a project delivery engine on a completely flexible basis. So we've been called an operating system for project delivery. We have been called a sort of bandwidth relief valve by our clients, often where we're helping them solve their real-time problems across the portfolio, regardless of what they are.
And you don't own and operate any projects.
That's right. Yeah, we will never compete with our client base, which is the industry globally. So folks in energy globally, we're strictly sort of B2B. So we're helping facilitate folks in the industry and their execution of their projects and pipelines, regardless of the status, the state, the location, or the size.
So, extra arms, legs, and brains for developers who are short-staffed or need help in engineering or procurement or siting. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right. It does cover all of the workflows. So internally, we have lawyers, we have procurement estimation professionals, scheduling professionals, project development, project management, program management, electrical engineers, civil engineers, structural engineers, you name it, across the entire IPP platform. We have all those skill sets internally, and we provide them as a service for our clients to access based on their needs in the moment.
Anything you don't do?
We do not do boots on the site studies. So, for example, we'll do the desktop portions of environmental assessments, which is about 90% of a report. We don't do the site screening. Same thing with geotech. We don't do on-site geotech studies. We will scope them, we'll RFP them for our clients, and then provide them with all the options in the marketplace and coordinate those activities at cost to completion without any markups or margins of any kind. But we don't do those internally.
So, one of the other things that you're pretty well known for is Solar Fight Night. So, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, it's definitely remains one of my favorite nights of the year. You go through the year with all these less than uplifting headlines in the media, and it can be quite discouraging. But when you go to fight night, you remember that there are so many good people fighting the good fight to improve our world that it's just so uplifting. But fight night was started, I want to say there were 14 folks in a hotel room talking about how to stay in business 18 years ago, how to exist in renewables, which barely existed, and how to help promote and grow the industry. And at the time, it was really focused and remains to be focused on making the connections that actually help get these projects done and see them through to fruition. It's also a celebration. It's just a celebration of the people, the technologies that compose our industry. And so that's certainly a part of it. And then the last factor is we've begun raising as much cash as we possibly can. We deduct the cost of the event, and then we donate what's left over to one of the fabulous nonprofit organizations in our industry that's advancing our core mission as an industry, which I would boil down to advancing or applying or supplying affordable low cost energy to everyone, right? Making it accessible to everyone. So that's really the genesis of Fight Night. It's also one of CIR's sort of secret sauce items, if you would, in our execution process.
Do you find that it comes up a lot when you're talking with customers, or there's like a good relationship creator or community creator there?
Yeah, it's a community creator. We have in our procurement process over 63,000 vendor contacts, and most of those come from relationships made at and during the Fight Night execution process, right? And so that really gives us amazing reach into the supply chains globally, of course, because folks come from all over the world to RE Plus and Solar Fight Night. And it gives us amazing reach into those relationships. And it's people that get things done. And so that's really where the value is created. But it's also, again, that sense of community. And it gives us something to talk about and bond around that is not just let's do business together, right? It's let's advance our mission together as an industry.
Well, I have to compliment you. I think that one of the big things that we've noticed in AI, there's so many things with AI, but what it's doing is people are visiting websites less frequently to get information or get answers because there's an automatically generated answer. And so we're finding that this is affecting media outlets where you're seeing even the top tech media outlets have more than half of a decrease in their page, in their site visits because
Yeah.
people are just getting answers right in AI. But there was a Harvard Business Review article that came out about a month and a half ago, and it said that the winners who are going to survive are the ones who create community. And so it's more than just giving an answer. It's creating a space where people feel like they can talk to each other, they can have an experience.
We certainly create experiences, right? Last September,
That's
we had a sway pole performer. We had synchronized swimmers that we flew in from California to Vegas. We had the Joker who ran around giving folks tariffs for no reason. We had the misinformation man with the tinfoil hat and the Pinocchio nose
I
talking
saw him.
about how
Yeah,
whales are
nose.
affected by windmills. And so, yeah, we certainly have fun with what's happening in the industry at the time. And sometimes if you don't laugh, you cry, right? And so that's we're playing on that and having some fun with our challenges because they're not going away, right? So we might as well celebrate them in a way.
Yeah, you said it, Daniel. Well, let's keep moving here. I want to hear more about your journey. We heard the backstory on Solar Fight Night, but what about you? How did you get to the place where you are today? How did you become a CEO?
It was certainly not a straight path for a long time, I would say. Initially, from the time I was 9 until I was 21, I was positive I was going to be a lab scientist until I actually did HIV research at University of Chicago. And in less than 2 weeks, I realized that there was absolutely no way that I was going to be a research scientist. So repetitive, very little human interaction. And so I dropped out of the PhD program that I had started at UMass Amherst in molecular biology, and I became an entrepreneur because I had no other fallback plan at all in mind. So thankfully, the first companies that I helped build were in software and then in real estate, where I got exposed to the trades and construction and delivery. And then I found my passion in renewables during my MBA program and launched my first renewable company out of the Drexel Business Incubator. Unfortunately for me, Melissa, this was late 2006, and so it was headed directly into the financial crisis. Very bad timing. And after that, I then set myself on a very specific path to get exposure to each of the primary verticals in the industry. And so first I acted as CFO, controlling corporate and project finance, and then as COO, controlling construction and engineering and project delivery, and then as a CSO at Safari Energy, now Aspen, helping deliver sales and relationship development. And then finally, as Chief Development Officer at Dynamic, now under Pattern, leading project development across the US and helping execute projects in that capacity. And in each of those roles, I learned from my amazing teams and our clients and our projects and financiers on how to execute these projects effectively. So I was able to get broad but very deep experience. And it was only after that, which took well over a decade, that I felt that I was ready to truly lead a large team and organization in the space as effectively as possible. And so, hence, CIR was born.
If you could go back to the day that you started the company, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I would say read the books. Many of the transformational moments for me as either a human or technical manager really happened when I was reading a great book about a related topic that was happening in real time within the company. And so take the time, don't regret the time. Super, super, super valuable.
Give me an example. Like, can you say more? Give like a
Of
specific
course,
book.
of course. I love talking about my favorite management textbook, which when I picked it up, it's called Creativity Inc. Has a picture of Buzz Lightyear on the cover. I did not know it was a management book. I was running through the airport when I grabbed a copy of it. It's by Ed Catmull, who founded Pixar. And he talks about the importance of creating psychologically safe spaces. And this was long before these were popular buzzwords. But that book completely changed my management style overnight. And he has in this book a bunch of very concrete, actionable items that you can try and test out as a manager to improve outcomes. And so, one example was I was a young manager just into my 30s and sitting in a conference room, and historically would have gone into the conference room, had a discussion, and assumed that folks who had a point to address would bring it up and we'd discuss it and we'd leave with meeting minutes and move into action. But Ed points out that not everyone is really comfortable in expressing their opinions in that setting, right? A-type personalities are, but not everyone is one. And so he says, go around the conference room and actively solicit feedback from each individual person. The very first time that I did that, the challenge that we were discussing, the by far best result came from the person who hadn't said anything until directly addressed and solicited. And so from that moment on, I realized that that type of management technique and creating that psychologically safe space to solicit feedback from everyone just was incredibly valuable.
That's a great example. I love that story. I love it that you get sometimes the best ideas come from like the most surprising places. So let's go to the next question. I want you to think about if there's any decision that you've made in the last year that you think other people in the industry would disagree with.
Certainly coming out of the OBBBA being
Mm-hmm.
passed, we accelerated hiring. When
Mm,
many of our clients were on pause or running for the nearest exit, uh, we felt that it was going to result in an enormous market opportunity. And so we have doubled since then from 70 to almost 140 folks. and certainly turned out to be very contrarian, especially in those first few months. But we felt that the need for our solution in the market was only increasing, right? That folks needed to get more operationally efficient, needed to accelerate their projects, and they needed exactly that problem that we set out to solve. That's the problem that was sort of put in a pressure cooker by the OBBA, right? Lower
Mm-hmm.
costs, move faster, move more efficiently, and improve outcomes, and do so on a variable cost basis rather than a fixed cost basis. And so we made that decision, and it was very hard because we were also scared, along with the rest of the entire industry.
Yeah.
And so I would say that probably was the most contrarian thing I've done in the last 12 months.
Has it been the case that some of the accelerated timelines and deadlines have made your services more desirable for some of your
Yeah,
customers?
big time. I would say probably a full 20% or more of our over 225 clients now came from their having to find a solution to fit a schedule need that no one else in the market could meet, and we could. So that's a common theme among our sort of onboarding, client onboarding,
Mm-hmm.
and is really critical. We have a 24-hour workflow, first of all. We have folks on all three shifts. And so you can imagine that alone can result in 3x the operational speed versus a domestic only platform. And because of our advanced AI and software adoption, we do move much faster than anyone that's sort of competing in each of the slices of development work that we help lead on. So definitely that's been a huge driver. Yeah.
So you work with developers all the time. What, in your view, is broken in the traditional development model today?
Wow. Yeah, that's a deep question. First of all, I want to say I don't think that any of the development shops out there set out to be in the position that they are in today's market, right? I don't think they did anything wrong. They have simply found themselves in a very different market dynamic. And I did the exact same thing building my first large solar platform, 85 team members across legal and engineering, master electricians, all of the skill sets internally to execute because you were doing things for the first time. You couldn't find good third parties to do those activities. And so you really had to internalize it and control execution and quality.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a very different universe now with the quality of technology and the quality of the global workforce in the industry. And so the market is completely shifted. So whereas that sort of 100% higher to your maximum bandwidth need environment existed and was very valuable historically, now it's very inefficient and it's very expensive, especially vis-a-vis folks competitors, right, who are adopting, moving more in a high-tech software, AI forward, global workforce forward environment. And so I think that's probably the key element that we're helping our clients solve for and that we see as a issue, sort of historic markets and conditions versus current.
Does your model help developers think differently about how they do business?
Yes, we are helping developers with a few key transitions, I would say. One would be entering new markets more effectively, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
geography as those markets strengthen, or it's technology sort of moving from solar into battery storage, or if it's moving from residential into commercial. We provide all of the necessary bandwidth, support, intellectual property to help those developers, builders make those key market shifts. So that's certainly where we're spending a lot of time, and they're adopting probably a quite different model than they would have historically, which would have been hire for this specific need and internalize it. Now they can test the market and then hire if that market grows and requires that full-time internal bandwidth. And so I think that's a valuable option that's now available that hadn't been available to those developers and builders before.
What is the most expensive mistake that you see repeated across the industry?
Somewhat loaded question, Melissa. This is one that we're very passionate about, frankly, because we are extraordinarily frugal in our entire execution engine and process. But there are a couple of buckets that I would say really are pet peeves of mine. I'll start with procurement. And we do see very deeply into our client organizations because we often end up acting as sort of an embedded layer or execution engine. So with some of them, we have their internal email addresses, we're on their internal Slack channels. We get a really good look under the hood. And in the procurement side, it is shocking to me how many folks will go out to request proposals from two or three potential suppliers, whether it's services or whether it's OEM manufacturers, which really blows my mind. And I know we're in a unique position because we do have those 63,000 vendor contacts because of Solar Fight Night, but we're also in a very it still really blows my mind that folks will keep their procurement processes to that limited of ecosystem, especially on commoditized goods, right? That really especially irks me. And some clients certainly have very good reasons to do that. They're operating in a very specific model or what have you. But on average, for example, for modules, we go to over 160 biddies globally. We need to find who wants the project, who's most efficient, who has a hole in their schedule, whatever it might be, who's the best fit for that project at that time. And it's rarely the same. We certainly see some manufacturers emerge as a preferred vendor supplier repeatedly, but often that's a moving target, especially with FIOC and other constraints now. And so that is a huge point. The other goes back to our point about adoption, tech forward adoption and deployment. I can say that we are aware of hundreds of millions of dollars of just engineering expense being wasted because folks are working with historic partners that they're comfortable with, that they haven't taken a leap to a more tech forward stance and approach to getting their projects designed, engineered, and delivered. And what's really compelling and interesting about it is not only are there hundreds of millions of dollars being burned there, but the outcomes are also worse because the software, AI, and other tools are so good, right? And so those historic providers that folks are comfortable with, have relationships with, and relationships are valuable, don't get me wrong, but the relationship cannot be at the expense of the project, right? Or your project costs and outcomes will degrade. And so there's a tremendous amount of pressure across not just the industry, but society at large to drive the cost of energy down now. We're seeing it drive political outcomes. So we really have to get more efficient. And the tools are there and they're available for every company. So I would at a minimum, if you're dealing with incumbent players, for example, on the engineering side, force them to ensure that they're adopting the most advanced technologies to advance these projects faster at lower cost and with better outcomes. So that's just the engineering segment, but it applies universally to every workflow. We use AI and software in every single workflow across the entire organization. So I would say those are the two primary buckets that we shake our heads at pretty regularly internally.
I'm curious about this because I think that across the board, I've found different levels of engagement on AI among different types of companies. And I
Yeah,
think a lot of people are curious. I think people are also scared. And I
yeah,
think there's trust issues that come up with it. So, have
absolutely.
you noticed that? And how do you deal with it? Like, have you ever noticed with a customer, if they say, oh, I prefer these, this firm that I've worked with that I know, how can I trust your AI? Have you ever had that question come up?
Oh, absolutely. There are massive very real data security issues. We have been told point blank by customer after customer that they are straight up violating our NDAs, right? They're loading our IP into tools that do not protect that IP, right? And so that's just happening. It's happening literally every day. And so the concerns are absolutely valid. Everyone should be asking their counterparties, what is your AI policy? If they care about their
Mhm.
IP in any way, they should be asking what the IP and the controls are around AI utilization. And so that's absolutely critical. Cybersecurity just is a whole nother rapidly emerging segment here. We're in a critical infrastructure environment, and so super important. And we still see AI primarily being a probabilistic tool. It's taking roughly the median of the intelligence that it is consuming and delivering you that sort of middle road. When you are deploying billion-dollar energy projects, you do not want the middle of the road, right? When you have very important outcomes, you don't want the middle of the road. You want the absolute best subject matter expert-driven outcomes. And so that's why, although we are AI forward, we've been adding a new subject matter expert to our team every couple or few business days, and we'll
Mhm.
continue to do that. We believe that the human in the loop is extraordinarily critical, but we do believe, and we have seen, and we see this every day, that the software and tools are accelerants. And that's where we use them to be more
Mhm.
efficient, more operationally efficient, to accelerate outcomes, to improve outcomes. Replacing humans, we do not believe is the path.
Why hasn't a model like yours existed before?
We certainly come from a unique situation. We spun out of what I had ranked before I left as the largest global solar developer. And that developer is executing, for example, a single project site that is 30 gigawatts of renewable capacity. So that's the
Huge.
equivalent of the entire United States combined solar industry in one single site. So that's the scale of what our team has worked on.
Mhm.
And with our team in India, even if you rewind 5 or 6 years, the domestic industry there was just really getting started. And so that expertise, the quality, and the leading minds that are there now across education and real life experience have really emerged only in the last 36 months or so. At the same time that we're seeing amazing software tools emerge, which frankly, many folks in the United States don't necessarily want to sit in a software tool all day, every day for 40 or 50 hours a week, right? It's not their calling in life. They may want to
Mhm.
build these tools, they may want to do strategic work with the outcomes of these tools, but there is so much value in having those subject matter experts operating these incredible software tools. And so we find that available overseas. So we're certainly at this intersection of emerging talent and emerging software that has facilitated the commoditization of so many professional services. Folks are concerned that knowledge is going to be commoditized at some point in the future. We commoditized electrical systems engineering 2.5 years ago. Fixed price, any capacity globally for any system size. The only organization still on earth that we know of that I could give you a price to do that right now and stand behind it no matter where it was. And so complete commoditization of extraordinarily complex professional services only possible through the evolution of the global renewable market and all of the phenomenal minds now working in the industry and the software tools and those accelerants. So certainly a unique situation. And the fact that we took and spun out of that mega scale IPP and we
Mhm.
started providing all of that IPP platform with bankability, sort of first, second, and third priorities as an IPP must focus on to the market as a service. So we're the only platform that I know of in the world also that spun out of an IPP and started providing all of those internal capabilities to the market as a service. And so it's certainly a variety of unique scenarios that allowed for us to exist.
So you've talked about AI, tech forward, software forward. Do you have your own AI, or are you using some of the popular models that people might know, like Chat or Claude? Like, how are you using AI?
Sure. I would say we probably are using every available large LLM that there is on the planet right now. We find each has unique capabilities. We're also customizing agents to an intense degree. So, for
Mhm.
example, we acquired Richard Matsui, founder of Kilowatt Hour Analytics, and I think he was risk officer at Loans Guarantee Program. We acquired his AI tools to assess on underwrite data rooms for project M&A and just project risk analysis. And those tools now contain over 20 unique agents, each one highly specialized to specific purposes and outcomes. So we can assess data rooms in hours instead of a month. And that's, of course, a major accelerant, but they're highly, highly specialized. Those reports still go through subject matter expert review, confirmation, and improvement.
Nice. I want to talk about marketing now. What is the toughest communications or marketing challenge that you're facing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to divide this one into CIR and then the industry.
Okay.
At CIR, what Jigger Shaw says is essentially you're better, faster, and cheaper than any incumbent in most cases. And so the only gap you have in the marketplace is trust. Many of our competitors, for example, in the engineering segment, have been around for 120 years. And
Hmm.
so obviously there's a big gap there. And of course, how do you address this? It's through storytelling, marketing, communications, explaining how and why you achieve the results that we consistently achieve. And so that's really a need for us. We've had a $0 external marketing communication budget, and yet we have grown to 225 clients with a single US sales representative and business relationship developer. But it is actually important for us to take storytelling more seriously in a pretty major way. So that's for us. We have major pain points there. The industry, of course, we are getting our butts kicked. Wholesale, getting our butts kicked by the volume of capital that is being poured into media, influencers, and pushing stories that we know to be wholly untrue in many cases. And so this is existential for us. And of course, what's really frustrating is our story is so much better, right? Like you can leave your ice engine car on in your garage and it will kill you and your whole family. So that's your story. Our story is wholly better than that. And yet we're still getting our butts kicked. And this is a matter, unfortunately, of capital and political influence and media influence right now. And it's really disheartening. But another way to put it is traditional energy net income for publicly traded companies in the United States was more than renewable energy publicly traded companies' top line revenue. And our top line and our net income was negative as an industry for publicly traded companies last year. A variety of reasons for that, depreciation and other benefits. But
Mm.
um, that's still a very, very wide gap that we need to overcome with creativity, resourcefulness, right? And that's where folks like you are so critical.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I think I noticed one commonality between the two things that you just talked about, both for your communication challenge with CIR as well as for the industry, and that is that people fear change. And so it's
Yeah,
really hard, if people are set in their ways, if they're used to a certain thing, change is really scary. And so it takes time to
yeah,
build that trust. And it's through repetitive, consistent communications that you're able to actually break through that because it does take time. So, I want to move on to the final sections of the interview, learning and development. Is there any management trend that you are following or that you're aware of that you might be trying out, or one that maybe you disagree with?
I am going to be very boring on this one, Melissa. I am still using the same management consulting technique that my grandfather used in the 1960s. So he was a management consultant. I think for some time he was the president of the US Management Consulting Board. They give the CMC certification. And he used what's called a top down, bottom up approach to structuring any organization and delivering on any sort of corporate objective. Now, what is interesting about this is that most companies use a top down approach. This is executive driven, market
Mm.
driven, and pushed down through the ranks for execution. This is what you usually see. Bottom up, you are incorporating the thoughts, the feedback, from the trenches, from the folks who are doing the work in the trenches, and you're giving them a seat at the table in finalizing the processes that the organization uses to execute.
And they might say something that you disagree with, or that you have to struggle through. So,
Yeah,
but usually
absolutely.
there's something there, right, for that's worth looking at.
Yeah. So right now, today, I am reading two books. One is The Obstacle is the Way, and the other one is The Hard Thing About Hard Things. So both of those, to your point, are about the value being created in the conflict and the tension, right? Specifically, not
Mm,
only don't avoid that, but run straight at it because that's where the good stuff is.
that's terrific advice. I love it. I love it. Okay, so then the last question is, what do you do at work or in your personal life to stay sane in this crazy, busy world? What brings you joy?
Mm. It's really work and family, and there's not time for much else right now. I love what we do as an industry. I call it the push pull, and it's pretty darn addictive. There's the pull of the economics and the generational wealth creation opportunity, and then there's the push of we're literally saving the world and saving the planet. And so that gets pretty addicting pretty fast to want to have and to see impact in those ways.
Was there anything else that you'd like to add for our listeners before we end this interview?
I do like to point out that as of the time you publish this, we will have just announced on solarfightnight.org that we have launched cleantechfactcheck.org, which
Mm,
is a database and repository of every lie that we have seen out in the world, where you can rapidly cut and paste responses to all of this lies and misinformation that's circulating. So I
yeah.
encourage folks to do that. I know, especially right after the OBBBA, I was spending way too much of my time drafting responses in different social media platforms. And so we wanted to facilitate this. And we have also databased all of the industry videos that are telling the true story of the industry, the farmers that we have helped, right?
Hmm.
The Republican folks who put solar on their rooftop and they say, this is the best investment I've made in my home. I don't know why this is political. And so those videos are all databased and warehoused for rapid access so that we can combat and tell the story more efficiently and effectively. We've also databased all the media contacts that we were able to find in the public environment and sphere so that folks and storytellers can connect. We think that it is absolutely critical. And we've also databased all the recruiters and job boards that we've been able to identify because we feel that the industry is going through pain and we really want folks to find good homes in their next journeys if they've been disrupted by this turmoil. So cleantechfactcheck.org, recommend folks check it out and help support us. If we can raise enough money this year at Solar Fight Night, the next level of this is to hire up a team of passionate folks, interns, marketing communication folks, and have them go out into the world, utilize this information, and respond in line to all these lies that are out there programmatically. We
Hmm.
need to build an anti-troll farm for our industry, right? And get the much better stories that we have out in line and in response to the lies that are being perpetuated by ignorance, special interests, what have you. So hopefully we have a great solar fight night this year. Hopefully we're going to break over 3,000 attendees and we're going to be able to fund some of this additional response to what's happening in the industry and the marketplace.
Wow, this is incredible. This sounds like an outstanding, outstanding tool. Well, this has been fun. Thank you so much for joining me. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Melissa. Keep up the great job telling the story of the industry and all of us in it. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Scaling Clean, the podcast for clean economy CEOs, investors, and the people who advise them. I'm your host, Melissa Baldwin. Our producer is Claire Quirin. If you like what you hear on Scaling Clean episodes, we'd appreciate it if you'd give us a 5-star rating and leave a comment where you get your podcast. And until next time, we wish you all the best in the clean economy transition.